Welcome to the AirCon Vault, recordings of the live streams from Airwiggle's audio conference. These are made free thanks to our sponsors: A Sound Effect, Game Audio Learning, Kilohertz, Audio Kinetic, Soundcuts, Tsugi, Boom Library, Sound Warriors, and Airwiggles, the online home for audio people.
Welcome to the talk, everyone, and welcome to our fabulous composers. Thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedules to have a little chat with us today and just answer some burning questions that all our viewers have got on here. My name's Lewis. I have done a talk already. I work with Lewis Thompson for Airwiggles. No product placement or promos. That's too obvious. But yes, hello, you might have seen my talk the other day. I am hosting this time, which is weird. But it's not about me today. It's about our fabulous composers, and I'm going to introduce them all to you now. So firstly, we have Noah Beazley, who is a Boston-based composer and assistant professor of video game scoring at Berklee College of Music. Previous works have included Proto-Droid Delta and A Token War, and she's currently working on Reawaken, Phosphie, and Skull Scavenger. She's performed at the 39th Golden Joystick Awards and has got many awards to her name already, including the BMI Film Scoring Scholarship, Video Game Audio Endowed Scholarship for Women, the, excuse my pronunciation on this, Jeronimas Kaczynska's Award for Outstanding Composition, Rick Applin Award for Outstanding, the Rick Applin Award for Outstanding Feud Composition as well. She's also the co-organizer of the Game Audio Boston group, so if you're in Boston, please have a look into that and catch up with all the Game Audio wonderful people that are going to be in Boston, I'm sure.
Boston and beyond, by the way. We mostly meet on Discord, so we're open to everyone from everywhere.
That is fantastic. We will get a link to that Discord as well, and we can put that in the group chat in the Hangout space.
Yes,
she's also spoken at GDC, PAX, Game SoundCon, and everybody's favourite AirCon23 and 24. So welcome back, Noah, and thank you so much for joining us tonight.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
We've also got Gina Loughlin. Loughlin? Is that how you pronounce it? Sorry?
Loughlin, yeah.
Loughlin, love that. I should have asked this beforehand. Professional. She's a freelance composer and a music designer with games with over 5 years of experience in the industry. She's got a master's degree in composition for the screen. Previous works include Tower Tale, Mail Time, and Pirate Queen. She writes her own music, which you can find, which will get linked as well, so you can have a listen to her own music. And she's a lover of crocheting and picking up new instruments. As well as that, she's also a fellow Northerner from the north of England.
Yeah.
Welcome, Gina, and thank you so much for joining us. Thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me.
And lastly but not least, we've got Julie, who is an award-nominated composer and sound designer for games. Her works consist of Say No More. She's worked on the Rocket League anthems, Godfall, League of Legends, and Albion Online. She's currently working with Telescope Games and Megapop. She's actually graduated from the Berklee College of Music as a film scoring major and video game scoring minor. And I was going to ask, have you and Noah actually met in person before, or is this the first time you guys have spoken?
Yes, we did. For the first time, I think, right?
Yeah, I think
Finally,
so.
at GDC this year.
Oh, amazing. Fantastic. And now you're here for meeting again in a better sound convention. Sorry, that's no shade on GDC. It's fantastic.
That's like real talk, though.
She's also interned under Henry Jackman and I'm going to butcher this name as well. Not Lorne Balfe. I know she's incredible, but I terrible with pronunciations. And she's had 10 years of experience in the industry this year round. She's also spoken at GDC, Zurich Games Week, and Most Wanted Music Berlin. So thank you so much for being here, Julie, and taking time out of your day.
Thank you.
It's a pleasure to speak to you all. So let's just jump straight into the questions. As for everyone in chat, feel free to pop some questions into the chat, and we will try and keep up with the fast-paced amount of questions you guys will be sending in, and we'll get back to them throughout the show and toward the end. But firstly, just to kick things off, who are the composers that inspired you guys' your paths? Julie, would you like to kick us off here?
Yes. I feel like when I was thinking about this question, I feel like my path into composing, it wasn't really because I was inspired by composers. I feel like I get a lot more inspiration from like more popular music, like artists that I listened to a lot, especially when I was like a teenager or like my early 20s. I think you can definitely hear that in some of my music. Like I was really big into Nine Inch Nails for like, I don't know, like 7 or 8 years of my life. Like it's kind of like an ongoing obsession, but you know, it comes in phases. um, and but one composer that I think really did stand out to me was oh wow, the name of course is escaping me right now. Joe Hisaishi. He worked on a lot of the Studio Ghibli films, and yeah, I just find his work really beautiful.
Of course, yeah. I mean, iconic,
Yeah.
to say the least. Yeah, but that's awesome. Yeah, I love it. I think similar to myself, I was. It wasn't so much composers; it was just listening to music, just having a love for music as a whole, and just wanting to get involved with that, and then taking that passion into the games audio world. What about yourself, Noah? How about you?
Yeah, I mean, I think when I was a kid, the composers who were really prominent were, folks like Howard Shore and John Williams, and, all their soundtracks are incredible and so inspiring. But I also played games as a kid, but it just felt like the composers were kind of these shadowy figures that no one had ever heard of. So I think it was really cool to see getting older, seeing composers who are, they're like 10 years ahead of me, who aren't these kinds of gods in the pantheon of composerdom, working on, the indie game wave that happened. So people like Austin Wintory and Lena Raine and Darren Korb.
Yeah, fantastic. It's funny you say that. I mean, for myself at least, growing up with some of the video games that I would play, I wouldn't even like think about who was composing them. I would just enjoy it and just it get sucked into the world of that they were building. And I think that's probably one of the most important jobs a composer can do is kind of draw the player into a game and world, even if they're not kind of recognized per se. But yeah, it's an interesting little side tidbit there. What about yourself, Gina?
So I think like the stuff I listened to like when I was younger that really got me into like wanting to write music was more like film music. So I really liked Rob Simonson. I still really like Rob Simonson's music. I think it's like really nicely blends like minimalist like orchestral elements with like electronic stuff. But then also I really loved the music from the original Sims game. And I remember when I started playing piano, I was like, this is what I want to learn. And I remember trying to, because some of them are really hard as well. It's like I would sit there and drive everyone in my house like absolutely insane trying to learn some of that stuff. And it's just, no, I absolutely love that. The original Sims music, I think it's amazing. So I think, yeah. And so I've just noticed someone said How to Train Your Dragon actually as well. I just absolutely love that soundtrack. I played it in a wind band that I used to run. Amazing, yeah.
That's fantastic. Yeah, absolutely love that. I think with Sims, I feel like they've done such a good job just to make it, because you could listen to that song, the songs in there for hours on end. I mean, you do, especially when you're kind of building and stuff. And to make it not drive you insane is incredible. But yeah, that's fantastic. Lovely stuff. Thank you all for your answers, everyone. So we'll have a quick chat about on the concept of kind of scoring and what have you. Do you guys have any preferred emotions that you like to score for? So do you prefer to lean to more the darker side with like a dread and such, or is it do you kind of a bit more hopeful, more like a sense of adventure? Who wants to take this one?
So I think personally I lean away from like dread, scary, that kind of stuff. I lean a bit more to kind of like the whimsical side of stuff. That's kind of the stuff that I work on, but I also find it really hard to write like happy music without it making me want to like feel sick and just be like in C major and whatever else. So it's kind of like a middle ground where it's like maybe a bit nostalgic feeling, like a mix of like major and minor kind of stuff going on. But no, I stay away from horror because it's not for me.
That's fine. I mean, it's people have got strengths in certain genres and such, and I mean, with Mail Time in particular, it shows. It's fantastic. And I feel like that nostalgic sound a lot of people are really pining for right now. I don't know if it's because it's like people in their like coming out of their 20s are just like everything is nostalgic now. They've lost everything. It's not they haven't, but it just feels that way. I don't know, but that's quite a common theme right now. What about yourself, Noah?
Yeah, so I'm kind of with you, Gina. I find that, I write in a pretty broad range of style, but I always find that I always inject a little bit of kind of silliness and jauntiness, even if it's the most, kind of serious style. There's always a little bit of that going on. But then I've also had a chance to score a lot of like super heavy metal type stuff for Proto Delta and Reawaken, and I'm loving it. Like I was such a huge metalhead in high school, and it's all just like pouring out of me now. So silly and jaunty and like super dark heavy metal.
Nice. So similar to baby metal, I guess. That's just that's fantastic. What about yourself, Julie?
I would say that is such a good mix. I would say I kind of lean towards two styles that are also extreme opposites. I'm a very I get kind of like angry easily kind of person. I just be like, I read something on the news and I'm like, oh, fuck this shit, you know? And so I find I need to like channel my rage into music. So on that side, then we get a lot of like the more industrial inspired stuff that I mentioned earlier. But then on the other hand, sometimes I just need to like chill out, and then I just write like really ambient, cool groove-based music, it's still a little grungy because I feel like that like noise is just in my soul, so it's still going to have a bit of that. But those are probably the two that I like to write the most. But of course, being like working composers, like I will get hired to write any type of music, and thanks to my education at Berkeley, I'm capable.
That's fantastic. I love that. You said with the kind of emotions changing there throughout. You can kind of hear throughout your musical kind of portfolio, as it were, how there's kind of been a change towards more the kind of heavier electronic types of sounds coming through. Was it the emotion that's kind of influenced this change? Did you feel like it was necessary to show that emotion?
I think that over like a long period of time, I was kind of focusing on finding more of like, what is my voice? What is my style in writing music? Because I think we can kind of get lost in doing work for clients, for projects. And it's important to also like on the side be writing music that is our own. So I think that has kind of influenced my shift in style, really just finding more of the things that I like. And also just learning more about how to make music, how to produce music, how to mix music, and getting more into the things that I was originally interested in, but didn't have the tools or knowledge to do. And as a fun side story, which I often tell when people mention this, like when I went to school, I actually did want to do electronic music, but they rejected me. And so, I just live my life doing what people tell me not to do. So now I do almost entirely electronic music.
I love that. You're just sticking it to the man. I love it.
Yeah.
Oh, fantastic. Lovely stuff. We're seeing a lot of people in chat pulling up. So someone in chat has said, like, it just jumps around so much. With adventure music, looking at Mixolydian and Dorian modes.
Yeah, I think it was interesting that Nikhil specifically called out chromatic mediants and Mixolydian and Dorian, because that's exactly what I was thinking, Gina, when you were talking, is there's a difference between music that's kind of fantastical and music that's very happy on the kind of more Ionian and Lydian kind of side of things.
So speaking of these terms, just for anyone kind of listening, music theory can be a very daunting thing for some people coming into the composition world, because they feel like if you don't know it, it is just give up. It's never going to happen for you. But realistically, how important is theory to you? How often does it come into your work? Do you rely on it? Gina, do you want to take this one?
So I've done uni and a master's, and I think at that point you'd think my theory would be good, but my theory is not that good. I can read music, but I'm not very good at like analyzing harmony and stuff like that. It's always something that I'm trying to get better at, because like I find myself kind of stuck in a pattern of like writing the same progressions, or like I'll play on the piano and my hands like fall in a certain way, and I'm just like, oh, this sounds the same as something else I've wrote before. So I've started taking up guitar lessons in a hope that it will help my theory in like a kind of practical way, because then I'll think about like voicings that I probably wouldn't play on a piano and stuff like that. But really, I don't think about theory unless I'm really stuck and I'm kind of like, oh, how can I make this better? How can I make this? If I'm just like noodling around and I'm not getting what I want, I'll just then try and figure out what it is that I want and how I can get that, and yeah, take it from there. But no, I don't think my theory is anything to sing home about.
I mean, it's interesting with you say kind of falling into the same voicings and such, because I feel like it's a bit of a blessing and a curse, because naturally you're going to be inclined to play voicings and play progressions that feel good to you and almost define your sound in a few ways. So I think it's great in that aspect, but of course if you're composing for clients or you're looking to kind of branch out something slightly different, you've got to force your way out of those set
Yeah.
ways. And it's an interesting kind of back and forth relationship between that type of thing. What about yourself, Noah? How often does theory come into your work?
Yeah, so I have pretty strong feelings about kind of how I think theory and ear training should be studied. I really think that the most important thing is to get the way that things sound in your ears. And, you know, no matter if you're studying harmony or counterpoint or any of that. So I certainly studied that, but I kind of put the color of what things sound like kind of at the forefront. And so these days, I don't really overtly think about theory. There's just kind of more of a Rolodex of like different colors I want to use from studying it all those years. But I think way more important to get it in your ear than to, you know, what you're doing on paper.
Awesome. Love that answer. Yeah, trust your ears. That's a really, really good way to look at it. And yourself, Julie?
I find there are two main times that I will use theory knowledge. One is if I'm trying to go for a specific sound and I'm like studying other music to kind of hear the progressions that they're using and what kind of like arranging are they using or instruments or whatever. And that happens fairly often, like especially if like a client sends me temp music, I'd be like, okay, what do they like about this? And I kind of dissect it a little bit. The other time will be when I'm doing interactive music, of course. So like right now I'm working on entirely like dynamic interactive music game, and like the musical stingers have to be in the same key as the background music, and the of course the layers and branching, everything has to be in the same key, and there's also a whale that sings, and that the whale has to sing in roughly the same key. So that, like, to do very complex technical stuff like that, I do have to think about like, okay, what key am I going to be in, what scale am I in, what are complementary scales, what tensions are okay, not okay, yeah, stuff like that.
Awesome. Yeah, I mean, it makes complete sense. So having a little bit of that theory knowledge, even to the basic level, then stretching it all the way up to the more complex stuff is useful. I think is what we can all agree on there.
Yeah.
Though not necessarily a necessity to start composing, but it does help. Lovely, Gina. You said you picked up a guitar recently in hopes of
Yes.
expanding your musical horizons, as it were. So do you play any other instruments, and what's your main instrument?
So I started off playing recorder, and then I picked up the flute and played that from about the age of 8 to 18-ish. And then I stopped because I got a bad grade, and I was like, I quit, I'm done. And now I pick it up and I play like every now and again. I play my own stuff, but no. And then I started learning piano because I had it in my head that I would be a music teacher when I was younger. And I was like, you need piano if you want to accompany people. And I don't really play any of them very well, but I just kind of like noodle around on them and have other little bits that I kind of try and get away with.
Nice. Was it hot cross buns, your recorder practice from the start, I'm assuming?
Yeah, it was my mum teaching me because that's the only thing she could play as well. So
That's so wholesome. I love it. Julie, what about yourself? I can see the guitars back there. Is that your
Yeah,
main instrument? Or?
Yeah, I did. Well, I didn't mention this earlier, but these actually belong to my girlfriend, so these are not
I
mine.
see.
But I do have. I don't know if this counts as like traditional. It is analog, okay? I have a synth here,
Ooh.
which you can't see, that I do use, and I've also borrowed this. I'm using this lately.
Oh, lovely.
And I have been using for like the last couple years, I made more of a point to like incorporate my voice as an instrument. So I'm doing that. And I used to play electric bass, but since I moved to Germany, I don't have one here. And my original instruments were piano and saxophone. But yeah, I really don't play any acoustic instrument at like a professional level at this point. I really play the computer. Yeah.
Yeah.
You play the MIDI piano role. I'm
Yeah, I play the MIDI piano like real good.
Love that. How are you finding the kalimba on your thumbs? We got one for Christmas from Soundcuts, and it's so fiddly. How do you find it?
You know, I don't have so much a problem because I actually have pretty small hands. So I think I'm lucky, but I'm not that good at it yet. So I don't know.
Yet is the key word there.
Yeah,
Soon.
I think it came with some little like metal thing, but like that seemed more difficult to use. So I was like, nah.
I think that's a tuning hammer, isn't it?
Oh, is that what it is?
I think
Yeah,
so.
I don't know anything about this. I'm just like, oh, thing that makes noise. I think I can use it.
Love that. And yourself, Noah, I can see the with the drum pads in the back there and a keyboard.
Yeah, don't be deceived by the keyboard. Piano is probably the instrument that I'm worst at, and I'm actually more of a drummer. So I played drums the longest, and actually went to Berkeley as a vocalist. I play some piano and guitar and bass, but there was a question kind of going around about whether you can, or whether you have to study piano or you can start with the guitar or another instrument. And I think the answer is absolutely. I mean, I think that you have to interface with a piano to make a MIDI mock-up. But knowing the piano can be great. And it can make you really fast, and it's very helpful. It's a great tool, but it can also be really limiting when you are kind of thinking of what you can do on the piano rather than independently about each instrument. So I think actually being a vocalist or playing the woodwind, for instance, can really, really help you think more melodically. And I think that everyone should study, take at least a few drum lessons and kind of go at it rhythmically.
Love that. Yeah, absolutely. That's fantastic.
Did I answer the wrong question? Was the question is piano helpful?
No,
what did I answer?
In that direction.
Oh, okay. I just like, oh my God, did I space out and answer a different question?
We'll jump to chat, actually. I mean, chat, I've been bombarding us with questions. Keep them coming. We'll try it. Well, Greg, what you've done there is super, super handy, so that's fantastic. So Kyle Ketchum has asked for anyone, so feel free to jump in if you have a great answer for this. I'm a composer early on in building my portfolio, but I've never had any formal training in regard to mixing/mastering. How do you go about getting a good balance in your compositions and allowing specific instruments to stand out and not sound muddied together? Who wants to take that one on? So to put you on the spot. Julie, go for it, yeah.
So I think one of the most useful things I ever learned about mixing, which is like an ongoing skill, it kind of never ends, is to think about, like, look at each instrument and think about which frequencies you want to like highlight and which you don't want to highlight. Like just like within the frequency spectrum for that instrument, whatever it is, and also like within the larger like spectrum bed of your piece as a whole. And simply like clearing out some low end on a flute or a piano that's mostly playing above 5Ks, like it seems like such a small thing, but it can really help to eliminate muddiness and unnecessary noise and just put things in the spectrum you want to hear them in while leaving space. Yeah, it's really about like carving and leaving space for other instruments or frequencies to shine where you want them to.
Yeah, great answer. There's a graphic that I've seen floating around, which is effectively all the generic instruments, like you've got your guitar, you've got winds and specific types of like brass instruments, what have you, and which space they generally occupy. I think having a look at that and then understanding what instrument carries or uses most frequencies within its range, and then as Julie said, carving it out and working your composition around that is some way that you could give a bit of clarity to your instruments. That's fantastic. Leon has asked, When starting out in the soundtrack industry, would you recommend trying to write in a wide breadth of styles? Sorry, write in a wide breadth of styles and genres, or focus on developing just one or two? What will game developers likely prefer? That's an interesting take. Who'd like to take this one?
So I'd love to answer this question because this is
Go for it.
something that sparks a lot of discourse online with people kind of, going into one camp or the other. Personally, I think it really depends on you, and there's pros and cons to each one of them. Obviously, if you write in a wide range of styles, you cast a wider net and have more things that can be available to you. But if you have a style that you really like and you really, really want to focus on, it's okay to do that, because if someone, if your style is like pixel art, cozy games, right? And your whole portfolio is pixel art, cozy games, and you're amazing at it and you've dedicated your whole life to making it sound as good as possible. If there's a developer looking for that specific composer, you're already going to be way, way, way ahead of everyone who has like a general portfolio. And I'm saying this as more of a generalist. Don't feel like you have to generalize more. If there's a style that you prefer to write in, there's definitely pros to specializing.
Yeah, love that. I think it's really interesting kind of hearing that approach as well, because I think if you are happy writing in one particular style as well, that's going to produce more fruitful results and something that's going to be a lot more real to you, rather than trying to cover so many things and not being super interested in all of them. So I think the passion that you have for it as well is super interesting. Lovely. Thank you so much for your answer there. Ollie Murray has asked, how long was it until composition as a job became sustainable and profitable? What did you do before then? Gina, would you like to take this one, just since Julie and Noah have answered?
Yeah, so I have been freelancing for like 5 or 6 years now, and pretty much the whole time have had a second job. Like just various kind of like retail jobs, some of them full-time, some of them part-time, depending on like what other work I had on at the minute and how well they paid as well. Like sometimes it was like I was having 2 jobs. But recently, like I've had a good stroke of luck over the past couple of months. I quit my job in March because I hated it. I was miserable. That's why I quit. And my plan was to get another job. But I've just managed to somehow fill it out with music work. And I don't know how long it'll last, but it is kind of like, freelance is always like not that sustainable, I guess. Or like not always, but it's difficult at the beginning, and it's difficult even not at the beginning.
Absolutely, yeah. It's sporadic at times, and it can be very volatile. I think is my experience in it too. Yeah, thank you for sharing that, Gina. Appreciate that. Sarush has asked. In fact, I'm going to skip Sarush's question just because it's similar to Leon's, which was asking about whether it's been versatile or whether it's going to something specific. But thank you for the question, Sarush. Ira has asked, is it possible to compose with a guitar, or is it better to learn piano, and what should my level be? Kind of touched on the answer you mentioned earlier, Noah. Would anyone like to, going from Noah, do you want to go into a bit more detail on this question? Would you like to, or?
I think I pretty much,
Covered
I'm trying to think. I mean, for me, I definitely studied piano, but it's not, it's okay if you have the skill to play at half tempo and some wrong notes sometimes, because that's the great thing about MIDI, is that you can just take stuff and drag them up and down. If you know in your head what you want the melody to be, and most importantly, you're playing the velocities to have a really realistic performance out of it, you don't need to play it perfectly on piano. That's not actually a requirement of making mock-up.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. I couldn't agree more. That kind of leads us really well into this next question here. So Will H has asked, I'm really interested in the recording, mixing process of video game music. I met a lot of composers at my university, but I was wondering if it's common to have your compositions recorded with live musicians. Also, do you often collaborate with audio engineers for your music/mixing and mastering needs? Julie, would you like to answer this one?
For me, I would say it's not common. I have literally never done it in 10 years I have worked as a game composer. But I say it largely depends on like who your clients are. If you're working in indie games and not like triple I indie games, like for the most part, I don't think people often get the budget. Maybe you get the budget to record like a single instrument or a handful. But yeah, for the most part, I think for me, I don't get so many opportunities to do that. So I don't even think about it when I'm like budgeting for most projects. What was the second half of the question again?
Do you often collaborate with audio engineers for your music?
Again, for me, never. I have never done that. I have always mixed my own music. But sometimes, like if I'm doing like subcontracting for sound design, like I may just hand off whatever I do, and then of course like the team is going to do like the larger mix of things. But for music, yeah, never. I would love to, but it's not really ever in the budget for me.
Completely understandable. What about yourself, Gina? Is that common with yourself? Have you worked with other live musicians?
Very similar to Julie in that it's budget. Like I play little bits myself where I can to try and like liven it up. Or I'm very lucky that my partner is also a musician, so I can use his skills where like he plays guitar and bass and stuff like that, so fills in for stuff like that. And then occasionally I can get some friends in and I'll pay them, but it's like I pay them out of my own pocket to do that. It's not in a budget. And then with mixing and mastering engineers, it's like I would love to, because I think mixing is always something where I'm like, I want to get better at it, so I do it. But it's like if I could just send it off to someone else, it would be really nice. But no, it's budget.
Absolutely, yeah. And Noah, for yourself, I'd imagine you're in a school of hundreds of talented musicians. Do you find that they're often collaborating together, or is that something you don't often see?
Oh yeah, well, I mean, at Berkeley, our students they're required to have sessions where they play for each other's stuff, which is really, really cool. I know for me, when I'm thinking about players I want to collaborate with, it's a lot of them are people who I met at Berkeley. I would say the player I collaborate with most is a guitarist called Joel Kent, who's just a wonderful, like, shredding god. And I always, if I can, advocate for a little more budget, I'll bring on Joel, or I'll bring on, if there's a bigger budget, like a string quartet or kind of a small chamber group. But yeah, it's all kind of about convincing the developer that that's worthwhile. And sometimes they have the budget for that, and sometimes they don't. And sometimes it's a priority, and sometimes, they'd rather allocate it elsewhere.
I see. Oh, fantastic. Thank you. We have another question here. We've got two more from chat, and then we'll jump back onto our scheduled questions. But if you have any questions in the chat, please keep them coming in, because hopefully we'll answer what you guys want to know. So we've got another question here from Irada, which is, what's your experience with working? What is your experience in working with remote vocal recordings? Now, I'm assuming that could be to do with like samples or getting a vocalist in to send some things. Have you guys collaborated with any vocalists in any of your works? Feel free to jump in.
I have, but it wasn't remote. So I'm working on a game, and the dev brought his wife to my house to record the vocals, and that was really cool.
Wow.
But it's something that I'm hoping to do if we get the budget. It's because I'm not a singer, so like whenever I sing on anything, it's auto-tuned like crazy and it sounds like crap. And I'm like, please ignore this. This is going to be better when we have money. But yeah, I've not done it. I think a lot of the people who I'm thinking about working with have the remote setups and they've done it for other people. So I'm hoping it will be like relatively streamlined, but I can't really say anymore.
Lovely. Thank you very much. Does anyone else want to jump in on that? If not, we can jump to the next question.
I have never. I also use my own voice, even though it's kind of shit, and then I fix it up later.
Yeah, I usually record my own vocals as well.
Just run it through Dehumanizer, and then no one will know it's you.
I have some like tricks to like make it like an aesthetic. It's like It's a style.
Would you be willing to share those? Just out of my own sheer curiosity.
Yeah, I always like do some like formant shifting to make it like it's like an aesthetic. It's like higher pitched. It's not quite natural.
Yeah.
And then I'll also use like a tuner, like M tuner or something for specific parts. And then I really like to use sometimes like stutter edit to create like weird glitchy samples, or like just totally screw up. Like I'll record something and then use stutter edit, and then like it just spits out like a totally new like sampled melody. So that's kind of cool. And then finally, of course, just like drenching it in effects is also an aesthetic. Okay.
Absolutely. Lovely. I'll answer one more live chat question, and we'll jump back to some of the other ones. And we've got plenty more. Thank you so much, Greg, for getting all these together. I really appreciate it. Stephen Wall has asked, for everyone, what was the book / video / series / other thing that taught you the most about the world of composing? Could also be soft skills that you've learned throughout the years. So is there anything that stands out from, since spanning your entire career, that stands out as something that's taught you the most about the world of composing?
I think this is a terrible answer because it's stupidly prohibitively expensive, but the GDC Vault is a really, really great resource. I just wish that they would make it more easily available. But yeah, lots of really, really great talks there.
Absolutely. I think for me at least, when learning about all the avenues you can go through, YouTube is a fantastic resource. Just a lot of the things on there are free. And there's some good stuff on there. There's not some not so good stuff, but there's still like a wealth of knowledge out there. From my personal experience, that's kind of where I picked up a lot of that knowledge.
Yeah, YouTube is tricky because you kind of need to trust your own instincts to vet the information that you're taking in. I think that's why AirCon is awesome, because it's like the GDC Vault, but it's actually accessible and free and vetted. So I would say if you're going to YouTube, just look up the person's credentials and try to suss out, if it's legit.
Yeah, that's a great point. Thank you for jumping in and saying that is a perfect way to approach it for sure. Gina, Julie, do you guys have anything that stood out for you as the biggest, maybe not like a eureka moment, but just something that helped you out in the world of composing?
So I don't know if there's anything that I've particularly read or seen that has had that impact, but it's more just like, I think a big thing that helped me was like eventually sending my music to other people and asking for feedback. Like at the beginning, it's super scary because you don't want to share it with anyone and it's your thing. But just like finding people who you can trust who will give you like honest feedback, and like trying not to get hurt by that as well. Just realizing it's like, oh, they're doing this to make me better. So I just think asking for feedback and taking it on board, and just ask for it from people who you respect and admire.
Absolutely love that. Yeah, couldn't agree more with that. Yourself, Julie?
Yeah, I would piggyback off of what she just said. Definitely getting feedback from people who are really, really, really good at what they do. Like some of the best, one of the best learning experiences I had was getting feedback from an audio director whose specialty was like music mixing and just mixing in general. Like I learned so much, and I went from like here with mixing to like up here in like one project. That was really cool. But also I would say that doing sound design, probably as much as I do music, has really taught me a lot about writing music, and like vice versa, in the way that I think about instruments and textures and mixing and arranging and everything, because I feel that a lot of the like creative things that I do in sound design, like that I do in sound design, and also that I learn from sound design, like I bring them back to what I do in music.
Awesome. Yeah, absolutely love that. Fantastic. Thank you for the answers there. So, Noah, can I ask you a question that I feel like a lot of viewers would be quite curious to know about, and it is, as a freelance composer, you have to set your own rates for your services. How would you approach setting your rates and negotiating with developers? Sorry to kind of jump into a different topic. I just feel like it's a really, really good question to ask, and I feel like a lot of people would be curious about.
Yeah. I mean, it's a really tricky question, and I feel like people can be really secretive about it, but for good reason. There's a reason the composers don't kind of publish their rates on sites, and I hear developers a lot saying like, oh, it's so easy for other stuff, and then composers like, I have no idea how much they want because like no one publishes their rates. And really the reason is that it can be really variable depending first of all on the complexity of the music and the scope, and are you using live players and all this stuff that has to do with the actual music requirements. But the truth is, especially when you're working in indie, sometimes you'll be approached by a studio that you're really, really interested in, and you'll get a lot of benefit from it, but they simply don't have the budget to pay you the rate that is the rate that you would want. And in that case, you have to kind of weigh the options and say, okay, am I doing enough other types of work, enough other projects that they can kind of cover for that? And you might kind of, give them a discounted rate because you really like them, you think it'll be a great portfolio piece, or any other reason like that. So it's a problem in that case if you've advertised your rates and you're willing to go a little bit under. Same with over, right? Honestly, I've had situations where I've talked to someone and it's like, oh, I really don't want to work with this person. This seems like it would be terrible. And it's like, oh, my rate is $1 billion a minute. And worst case, they say no, right? So it depends on a lot of things. And it also depends on how much leverage you have, right? Are they talking to other composers? Do they really specifically like your style? And do they have the funding and all of that? So really, really tricky. So when I'm talking to a developer, the first thing I ask them outright, do you have a budget for this game? Actually, I start with, do you have a budget for the music? And then I go to, okay, if you don't have a budget for the music, do you have a budget for the audio? And then do you have a budget for the game? If they haven't answered all three of these questions, I just kind of try to suss out the deal. And you don't want to be the first one to give the first number, but sometimes you have to be. But yeah, just a word about leverage is that I think that sometimes you have more leverage than you would think. It can feel like in such a saturated field like you don't at all. But the truth is, I've talked to so many developers who have been like, oh, I worked with this composer and they were so flaky, and then I worked with 10 composers and each one of them didn't answer my emails and whatever. If they find someone whose style they like and they like you as a person and they want to work with you, and you've proven to them that you're professional and not flaky, you have quite a bit of leverage in that negotiation, more than you think, for sure. And if you're interested in looking at some numbers, I would really recommend looking at Mason Lieberman's Twitter thread that he put up maybe a year or two ago. He works as an audio director, so all he does all day is look at people's rates and see how much people are charging in different parts of the field. So really, really illuminating thread if you're kind of wondering what should be the ballpark that you should be charging.
I love that. We'll make sure to get hold of that and put that in the Hangouts chat a little bit later on. But that's lovely. Thank you very much. I appreciate the kind of being upfront about it and just asking the questions of what is your budget, because I know I've been in situations like that, and it's like, well, how do you approach it? Do you say, I can do it for this much, but I think just being direct, because it's essentially a business conversation that you're having, isn't it? It's just a trade-off between two.
Totally. I hate the dilly-dallying. I within 2 or 3 emails, it's like, well, what's your budget? Let's get this out of the way. I'm always super upfront about it, so I recommend it.
Awesome. I love that. And yeah, talking about kind of getting jobs and kind of landing gigs and what have you. Gina, I believe that you got your first gig, or first job was on Reddit. Is that true? And if so,
yeah.
How did it happen? Would you advise anyone to go this route, or would you kind of say stay clear?
Well, this was 5 or 6 years ago, which doesn't seem that far, but I think things probably have changed a bit since then. But I didn't know what I was doing, and I had just graduated, and I was like, I want to write for games. And then my whole course had not touched about how you actually get a job or anything like that. So I was just scouring Reddit forums, basically searching hiring a composer on every single forum I could find. And then it was a good gig, but it didn't pay very well. But I've managed to, I think I only got it because I was the first person who messaged them. I think I was just online at the right time. I messaged them first and they got back to me. And yeah, it was a way to get a gig, but I don't know if you should all now jump on Reddit and try and get one like that, because I think a lot of it was luck. I just happened to see the post at the right time, and I sent stuff that kind of matched whatever they were after at the time. So yeah, maybe that was a bit like pessimistic. I don't know.
It's a realistic scenario that's kind of happened, isn't it? And just hoping others can kind of draw some knowledge from that. I mean, just kind of a little bit off topic here, but how would you approach, or how would you kind of suggest others kind of approach looking for work in that sense?
It's really hard. I think like I've had the most success kind of building a social media platform, and not that I have like a big following or anything, but just like being active on social media has meant that like the past, I don't know, 3 or 4 gigs I've got, it's been people approaching me rather than me chasing people, which is quite nice. But again, a lot of it is luck, and I think I could only do that because I had another job at the time. It's like I wasn't desperate for audio work because I could sustain myself through other work. So I don't know. There's not a secret really. I don't think. I think a lot of it is luck and good timing and like going to events and being online and meeting the right people.
Absolutely, yeah. What about yourself, Julia? Again, I'm going a little bit off topic here from the set questions that we had, but I'm just curious.
What is the specific question? The follow-up question.
Yeah. So, how would you advise others to kind of approach looking for work? What do you think would be a good steps for that as a composer? I know it's a big open-ended question, but is there anything that
it's a hard question. I think that my answer has changed over time. I think that everyone kind of finds a method that works for them. Like I'll see other people using a method that I would never use. Like it's just not who I am as a person. But it works for them and they're successful and they get the kind of clients that they're interested in. So I think that it's kind of about finding your niche and the people that you want to be working with and approaching them in a way that is mutually beneficial for both of you. So that could be just being an online presence, like Gina said, that promotes and markets like who you are as an artist, as a brand, as whatever, and people come to you. That could be like a more direct approach, like going to all the conferences, aggressively throwing your business card at people. Like this is not me, but I see it work for people. I think if you can find a way that feels comfortable and authentic to you, then you will naturally find, hopefully naturally find people that you're going to get along with who also want to work with you.
Love that. Be yourself.
Yeah.
That's fantastic. Noah, do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, I mean, I liked what Gina was saying about like, you got a gig from Reddit, but it was kind of like, it feels like it can come from any of those possible sources, right? But it just happened to be on Reddit that day. So I think related to that is try to just be in as many places as possible. When you sort of send out little feelers to every corner that you can think of, eventually something will pan out for that. Julie, I agree. I try to be not like super aggressive. I don't I pretty rarely actually give people my business card. I do it when I feel it's appropriate. I don't cold email people. I just kind of get involved in communities and get to know people. And I found that over time, people end up coming to me because they trust me and they like me and they want me to work on their projects. So it's a little bit of a frustrating answer because time is expensive, right? And so I also happen to think that's kind of one of the big structural issues that we have in the industry and why marginalized people often get pushed out of it, just because you need time. Time is kind of the most important component. And yeah, it's luck, but you kind of make your own luck by just putting a bunch of stuff out there and kind of waiting.
Love that. Yeah. Thank you. That's a really in-depth addition there. I appreciate that. Lewis Thompson's just put in the chat that because myself and Lewis got a job. I think myself and Lewis did work on this as well. One of our friends was just cold posting on a game dev Facebook group and managed to get a job that way. So it really does, like you say, does come down to kind of what works for you. and that is a huge water cup. We stole it from a gig. It is the size of my head. Anyway, that's by the by. Sorry, getting a bit distracted there. Well, actually, since we're kind of just mentioned on chat there, we'll answer a couple of chat's questions as well. We've got a list of them. Thank you again, Greg. It saves me hours of scrolling. So, Daniel has asked, what is the most common amount of players that you work with within your respective compositions? Are we talking smaller ensembles or kind of full symphonic orchestras? Of course, referring to like VSTs and such, unless you have worked with, London Contemporary Orchestra. What is the kind of common amount of players or tracks that you would deal with? Gina, do you want to kick us off on this one?
Well, obviously this kind of like varies from what you're writing. I don't think I'm the kind of person who, or I say I don't think, I'm not the kind of person who has a huge orchestral template with hundreds of tracks, because my computer couldn't handle it. It would explode. So I think a lot of my the music I write like lends itself to smaller arrangements anyway. So it's probably like, I don't know, between like 10 and 20 at most if it's a big track. But no, it's like I can't tend to keep things smaller just because it's easier for me to manage, and I'll just use key switches rather than different instruments for all of them, because my computer is quite old at the minute.
I know the pain of key switches all the time, and then having to kind of do roots and sending stuff just so one reverb doesn't do I know the pains. Julie, what about yourself? I'm sorry, I can't help but notice that your cat down there as well.
She's coming. Here she is. Yeah, it varies a lot for me. It can be as small as like 2 to 3 instruments. If it's like really minimal, I'm just doing kind of like, piano and some pads or something. But it can also go up to like 60 or 70 tracks. A lot of that, I feel like the things that kind of start to inflate it are like percussion, sound effect type elements, and I don't know, like I do this thing where like if I want to like have a slightly different effect on an instrument, like I don't automate it, I just copy paste, and then I put the effect because I'm like, because the more you add the automation lanes, like I use Reaper, so the more you add the automation lanes, like it just gets bigger and bigger and bigger. So I'm just like, no, it's not worth it. Yeah. So yeah, anywhere from 2 to like 70.
Just one track is just pizzicato, then the next one is maybe staccato, and it's just
exactly. Yeah, that's what my sessions look like.
Just on a side note to that, how do you deal with the arranging of it? Are you like color coding things? Are you just kind of grouping things? I mean, Reaper's great for like the whole grouping functionality.
Yeah, it depends a little bit on the project and what are the instruments that I'm using, but I do color code things. I will put things in folders. Typically, like right now, what I'm working on, I'll have like a melody folder and percussion, pads, rhythm, sound effects, metallophones or something like that. I just kind of, whatever seems like relevant for the large chunks of things I'm working with, I will stick them in folders and color code them. And I do have some like kind of rough like default colors that like my bass tracks are always purple. Like I don't know why, they just are. Percussion is always blue. Maybe because like I don't like blue, and percussion is like my least favorite thing to do.
Love that. Just a quick one. Terry Wellman, what's the name of the guy who does the cost and pricing research for what we do as well as other services? I believe you mentioned earlier, no, is it Mason Lee?
Oh, Mason Lieberman. Yeah, and I can probably find his thread and just post it here. It's pretty easy to, I'll post a link.
Lovely, no worries. Just because we've had someone in chat asking, that's all. Brilliant. And as for yourself, Noah, I mean, what is a typical kind of session look like for you? Do you have quite a lot of tracks in that respect? Or even when you're working with people?
I couldn't tell you exactly how many they get up to. I mean, if I have something that's straight up orchestral and I want to do like a really detailed orchestral score, I have a template ready where everything is purged. So it starts out not destroying my computer, but obviously by the end, it trudges along. But yeah, usually if I'm not doing something that's just kind of straight up orchestral, I'll usually start a new template per project, just depending on the sound of it. Like with Phosphie, for instance, we're doing like mandolin and accordion and chamber strings and upright bass and voice. And like, it just doesn't make sense to start that out from a template. I just like to kind of start clean with that. So yeah, I mean, that being said, I think that DAW organization is like the bane of my existence. And I'm currently trying to figure out, maybe a better way, because I think that that's the number one thing that gets in the way of creativity, just trying to navigate all of that stuff. Yeah, it's a work in progress.
Yeah, door housekeeping is a weakness on my side as well. I have that copy paste mentality as well until my computer breaks. So yeah, I am with you, and I've just got 17 tracks all labeled solo cello. Then
I have a secret. I keep all mine named as. Oh, sorry.
No, go ahead.
I keep mine all named as like contact, and they're all grey until I'm about to like post a video on social media, and then I'm like, oh my god, I can't post this. This looks like I'm a maniac, so I make it look pretty for social media. But no, I won't like it. I'm a crazy person for that.
I do that with my battery tracks, though. I like whenever I export stereo files to print each individual sample. I'm not going down there and naming like 30 tracks of percussion. Like, I don't care. I just like export them. It's like I have to rename them because of this weird like thing Reaper does with the default name, but I just rename it to like battery -01 of 2 of 3, and then I drag them into my mixing session, and then I have to like listen and be like, oh yeah, this is the snare. At least like in battery, like there's generally a formula, like the kicks are in the front and you're like rides and hi-hats and whatever is going to be like at the bottom.
I'm with you. I feel like whenever I'm composing, I will often have the MIDI, just the patterns of the MIDI there, and I'll just recognize those and go, oh, that's my naming feature. It's nothing to do with the naming at all. It's just the shapes. This is more confessions. Yeah, we're real composers, we promise. Okay, lovely. Jumping on to another question from Malachi. How do you go about advertising, pitching yourself as a composer? Is growing a large social media essential for finding work? Interesting concept. Gina, you said you have, that's one of your main kind of drivers for your business. How important is it for you?
I kind of hate how important it is for me at the minute. I would really like to not be on social media. It's kind of shit. Especially like now with it not really working properly and just being loaded with bots and stuff like that. But I don't think it's necessary to have a big following or like a big presence on social media, because like I work with people who aren't on social media at all, and they find work other ways. They find work by going to events and stuff like that. So like Julie was saying before, it's just kind of find a way that works for you. If it's social media and you like being on social media, then that's fine. Or you're kind of like trapped with social media because it's worked before, then I'm sorry, but carry on.
Love that. Yeah. Noah, what about yourself? How do you kind of approach that?
I mean, I think when I think about the gigs that I've done and the ones that I'm working on now, none of them came from social media. They came from personal connections, or, there's a couple of different ways I got my gigs. But I actually really enjoyed Twitter, past tense. I really liked putting out my little mini videos and getting my little followers. But I honestly don't really know where to go now. I find Twitter to be just such a horrible hellscape that I can't go on. I just don't go on there. And it's just become really, really hard to be a creator there. So, Blue Sky is great, but it's really not very friendly to people who post videos. I feel like we're in kind of a moment where it used to be really clear where you go to build your following. And in game dev, it's just kind of Twitter. And now it just feels like people don't really know where to go. So that's where I'm at. But I'm feeling okay with it because really most of my gigs are coming from being in smaller communities on Discord and Slack and actually going out to conventions and all of that. So would love to have a better social media alternative, and let me know if you know of one.
If only there was a better social. I'm not kidding. But no, yeah, absolutely. I completely agree with you. Elon has done something on Twitter. Maybe not necessarily the best thing. But yeah, I absolutely I couldn't agree more. What about yourself, Julie?
Yeah, I think that it's tricky because I think that social media is, for a lot of people, a way to vet someone. So if they don't know who you are, but they're thinking of working with you, they'll go check out your website. They might check out your Twitter, your Instagram, like, oh, they have like 2 followers, like they're not well known. Maybe they haven't worked on anything. That could be a barrier for them hiring you. But at the same time, I think, like for me personally, the era of finding work on social media is a bit over because, as you said, it is so disjointed now. There's no one single place for game dev community. So I would say definitely for me, getting work from social media has become less since the dawning of X. So what has become more important is going, the traditional shit, like seeing people face to face and talking and communicating and like Noah said, being part of a community, forming your own community, finding like-minded people, all of this stuff that is like, regardless of social media, is important in the first place. I think it's just kind of reverting back to that a little bit.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. It's that human interaction that social media was almost a gateway for to remove the distance side of things, but ultimately it comes down to being a human and talking and just having that interaction for sure.
Although that does make it more difficult if you're not like in a hub of game dev. And even if you are in a hub of game dev, like there's only so many developers in your area and how many game audio people are there. So I think it has made it more difficult in that you kind of need to get yourself out there more, but like physically, like tangibly, which is also a bit more expensive to be traveling and going to conferences and all of that.
Absolutely. It's a hard balance to achieve realistically. But yeah, completely valid take on all things considered. Just conscious of the time, we've just gone over the hour. We can push on to an hour and a half if everyone is happy with that. I don't want to take up your time if you guys do need to dip at all. Is everyone happy to stay for another 25 minutes or so?
Yeah, it works for me.
Lovely stuff. No, I just wanted to check. Hopefully you're all having a good time, and hopefully chat's having a good time. Lovely. We'll list off a couple more of these questions from the live chat, and then we can round off because we've got quite a few of these come through. So I'm going to butcher this now. I'm so sorry, but I'll do my best pronunciation. Fuwit has asked, what would be your approach if you're in a situation and you need to write in a genre that you're not familiar with? That's a great question, actually. I quite like that one. Noah, do you want to kick us off with? Gina, sorry, yes, immediately.
Yeah, go ahead.
No, sorry. I feel like this is my eternal struggle at the minute because I've taken on work that I shouldn't have maybe taken on. Like I took it on because I was like, I can do it, and then you take it on and you panic and you're just like, why did I say that? And then you doubt yourself for ages. And then I think a big thing is if you do so, like maybe have a boundary of something that you wouldn't work on. If there's like personally, I wouldn't work on like heavy metal because I just know there are so many people who could do it way better than me, and they should do it. And I don't really have like a big interest in it either. It's like I didn't listen to it a lot. It's not something I'm super into, so it's just I wouldn't do it. But if there's something like I got asked if I would do some like hyperpop stuff, and it's like my background is orchestral, and I was like, sure, yeah. I can do that. I can write lyrics and vocals, having never done it before. I think a big thing to do is just like take a minute and like do some research and like get excited about it, and then go watch some YouTube videos or talk to people who make that kind of music, and just do it little bits at a time. Like don't try and write the full track. Like maybe try and write an intro, and you're like, oh, that sounds like how it should sound, and just be calm and. I think say yes to things that scare you. Like it's how you're going to grow and get better at stuff and expand your range, but only do it if you're kind of like excited about it. Like if it's scary but like you dread it, then maybe don't take the gig. But if it's something like because like the music I listen to I just listen to like pop music, so it's like a chance to kind of write something similar to the stuff I listen to, which is cool. But yeah, sorry, I rambled a little bit, but I just, yeah, it's my struggle at the minute. So yeah.
Not at all. No, I love that. My favourite part of that answer, I mean, it was a fantastic answer all around, but the one that stood out to me was get excited about it. I feel like your mindset shifts into such a different world when you think this is cool. I really want to do this now. So I think that's personally my favourite takeaway from that, aside more from the rest of the answer, of course. What about yourself, Julie? How do you find?
Yeah. I kind of agree with everything Gina said. Like, if it's something that's a little bit outside of my comfort zone, but I feel good about the project and I like the challenge of learning something new, then I'm definitely going to go for it. But I'm also not afraid to recommend someone else or turn a gig down if it's not really what I want to do. And I have done that in the past. Like, sometimes you don't have the choice. Like, if you are like me and this is what you do and you need to make money, then sometimes you just take it. But if you have a choice, then sometimes it's better to take projects that are going to kind of further your portfolio in the way that you want, rather than focus your efforts on something that is not going to be so fulfilling for you. Because, I mean, let's be real also, like, game composing is not the most lucrative career. So if you're going to be miserable and you're not going to make that much money, like, why take it?
Great sentiment, yeah.
Yeah, just to add to that, those people that you give those gigs to, a lot of times they'll come back and they'll uplift you when they get a gig that they're not comfortable doing. So totally recommend that. Also, hi Fouet. Fouet and Ollie were both my students at Berkeley, so it's great to see you guys here.
Oh, fantastic. Oh, lovely. Yeah, I mean, lovely to meet you both. Meet you, I guess. But yeah, no, that's a lovely little sentiment. That kind of ties back to when we were looking at earlier, how would you approach kind of finding work and stuff. Interactions like that, when you meet these people and you're just friendly with them, you're just having those interactions, going out for a drink with them or coffee, what have you. Those instances can pop up, provided you're still working and honing in your craft and being active and such. Is there anything more you'd like to add on to that, Noah, or are you?
No, I think the two of you really covered it. I mean, I guess the only thing I would add is similar to what you were saying, Gina. When I have a new genre that I'm working on, that's it's similar enough to stuff that I do that I think I can kind of reach and do that. I just listen to it like constantly, on the bus, on the train, just walking, cooking. I just kind of saturate myself with the sound so that I can emulate it better myself.
Awesome. Yeah, love that. I'm very similar.
I also do that.
Yeah. It's a great little tip. Lovely. Next question. We'll just quick fire through these chat questions here. So we've got Sarush has asked, which MIDI controller do you prefer to use and why? This is going to be a controversial one, I feel. Who wants to kick us off?
I'm going to start because I think mine is not controversial. So we'll start like mild, huh? So I am an Arturia person. I have an Keylab 49, and also my analog is the Mini Brute 2, and I have the Rack Brute also. Yeah, I think that's a pretty non-controversial opinion.
Good choices, yeah. What about yourself, Gina?
So I've just got a Roland A49, and basically I wanted something with as few buttons as possible because I never use them, and also I don't have a lot of desk space, so I wanted like 49 keys, but like I don't need any of the twiddly knobs or anything. Well, don't use them. They don't mean anything to me. So I'm sorry, but I'm not into it. I'm not into gear, really. I won't lie.
That's completely valid, honestly. I mean, I've got a Novation Launch Key 49, and it just does a rainbow at me all the time. I'm just like, stop! I don't. I just modulation, pitch, maybe pitch, and then just the octaves. And it's like I'm done. Because I'm completely with you on that, Gina. What about yourself, Noah?
Yeah, so as you can see, with the light glistening off of it currently, I like to have an analog, not an analog, but like a weighted keyboard that's 88 keys. So, pretty run-of-the-mill Yamaha. And then I have an Novation Impulse, like a very, very small Novation Impulse, just so I have something with a mod wheel that's a little bit more nimble. I really, really like the Impulse because with a lot of those unweighted keyboards, I feel like they're very, very flimsy. And so this one, it's pretty cheap and it's great. It's been my workhorse for like a couple of years, and it has kind of a really, really nice semi-weighted action.
Love that. Yeah, I mean, I wish mine had a kind of more weighted feel. That's one thing that I kind of a bit jealous of, to be honest with you. No, I'm only kidding. But then that's fantastic. Fantastic. Thanks for sharing. Let's just jump on to the next question here. So Brian has asked, what have you learned about negotiating budgets with your clients that's been most helpful? So are there any particular points that stood out, I guess, when during a negotiation? Noah, you started off the conversation with that previously. Is there anything that stands out for yourself?
That is a good question. I mean, I usually I like to give them a range and a couple of different options if they're really trying to figure out what's in their budget. One thing that I like to make really, really clear to them is, they're trying to figure out the number. They think like there's a number and I just have to find it, and like you have a fixed rate and like there's the exact amount of music that needs to go over this game. And I like to kind of try to challenge that thinking and be like, hey, every game has a lot of different scenarios that can work for it. You can be all in the box. It can have live players. It can have 10 minutes of music. It can have 30 minutes of music, an hour of music. Like every game, you can pretty much outfit the scope to work for it. So I encourage them to not think of it as looking for that number, but more like, meet me at maybe the lower end of my range that I work in. If you don't have a big budget, we'll cut down the scope, and here's how it's going to work with the budget that you have.
Awesome. Yeah, love that. Thank you. Gina, Julie, do you two have anything to add on to this?
I think similar to what Noah said, like, if I always ask for their budget first, and then when they give me that, I say, okay, this is what I can do for that amount. But if you want to stretch it further, if we go for X amount, I can also give you this. If they don't have a budget, they really don't have a budget. Like this is my least favorite scenario. But then I'll typically give them like a tiered scale of like what I can do for them. Like this low, medium, and high, and then I'll list like the different things that we can do within that. But I have had happen somewhat recently that like sometimes developers will use you for like budget estimation. So I would just caution people to be like careful with how much time you put into this stuff up front, because sometimes they're just gathering information and just looking for numbers. And if you're putting like, very like detailed like budgets and like pitches together for them, they can still go and hire someone else. And they might go and take your budget and your pitch and then go hire someone else. So I like to try to keep it like very like brief, and this is what I can do, done. If you want to talk more, then we sign a contract.
That's a great way to just protect yourself, because it's a very realistic scenario that does happen. I'm sorry it's happened, firstly, but I mean, I'm glad you can teach others about this and hopefully let that avoid the situation for the others as well. Gina, do you have anything more to add to this?
Just to jump off what Julie was saying, I think it's probably a good idea, like, to have a conversation about like rights to the music as well, like early on, because I remember I did like a detailed budget for someone. I broke down all these music systems I would make, and it took me forever. I set up a fancy Notion page, and then it came to like talking about the rights, and they were like quite stubborn on what they wanted, and I wanted to keep the rights and they wanted them, and we kind of butted heads on it and couldn't come to an agreement. So maybe have that conversation earlier rather than later, because if you're not going to find something that'll work that way, then maybe it's not worth pitching for them if you're not aligning in that way.
Yeah, great point. Again, protecting yourself, and kind of comes back to one of the those tough topics that you kind of got to speak about, like payment as well. Just get them out of the way early, set the tone straight off the bat, and then you can continue making some great stuff on both sides.
Yeah, to add on to that, I think it's really important to explain to them what it means to have an exclusive license, that, it's not a buyout. They don't own the rights to the music and everything. I mean, sometimes if you're working for a AAA company, they'll really insist on that and they'll pay you a ton. And so like to compensate for that. But unless they're like doubling or tripling your permanent rate. You should always keep the rights and the rights to publish a soundtrack. What they're getting is the right to use it exclusively on their game, and I guarantee you're not going to use it on something else. And yeah, I feel like a lot of times they don't really understand that, and so yeah, really good point, Gina. But it's really important to tell them ahead of time because there's no reason that they should retain the soundtrack and all of that if it's an indie game.
Yeah, lovely advice. Thank you so much. I've got about 8 questions here. We'll just kind of quick fire these ones if you want to, just because I want to give you guys time at the end to chat about all the other bits and pieces. So we'll just kind of quick fire through these ones. So Rina has asked, Rina, apologies if I've completely butchered your name there. What orchestral sample libraries are your favourites? Gina, since you work quite heavily in the orchestral world.
I kind of, so a lot of the stuff I'm using is old Spitfire stuff, and there was the whole controversy with Spitfire. So I don't know if they're a good company to buy from anymore, and I haven't bought anything since anything kicked off. I do use it's not orchestral, but like one of the main ones I use is like the Native Instruments Noir piano. I think it's really versatile. Yeah, it's really gorgeous. You can do a lot with it. So yeah, I don't really have like safe companies to recommend because I don't know what's happened with Spitfire since then. I just kind of kept out of the loop of it.
That's fine. To my knowledge, I believe Christian Henson, who is the centre of the controversy, has left and has started up his own company.
Okay.
That's where my knowledge is at with it. But thank you for being so open about kind of what you're sharing and what have you. Noir is a gorgeous piano. I absolutely love it myself. Julie, what about yourself?
Yeah, I don't really work with orchestral so much. So most of the instruments I have are going to be like pianos, keys, pads, percussion. But for those, I do still use Contact quite a bit. So I have quite a few libraries, like standalone instruments from Native Instruments. I have some things from Embertone. They do like single instrument libraries mostly, I think, and I think they're pretty good. I have a piano from Imperfect Samples that I really like. And yeah, that's probably like the bulk of what I use for the closest things to orchestral that I use.
Awesome stuff. And yourself, Noah?
This is going to sound kind of silly, but I'm currently obsessed with Accordions 2 from Best Service. I've actually been really blown away by Best Service's stuff, like the level of detail. I mean, they have different creators doing different things, different libraries for them. I don't remember the specific. Look up who did Accordions 2, and all of his libraries are like really, really detailed and really beautiful. Yeah, Gina, same. I use Spitfire's orchestral stuff. I bought the whole package in one Black Friday like 6 years ago, and that's just kind of been my workhorse orchestra since then. I've been kind of tempted by some of the Berlin stuff. I know is supposed to be really, really great. But yeah, I just recommend waiting for Black Friday and just getting a big orchestral bundle and just sticking with it, kind of learning it in and out until there's kind of like another major update in the world of symphonic sampling.
I agree. I mean, it's so easy to fall into the trap of, oh, I'll just grab this instrument. Oh, what about this one? Oh, this is on a bundle. And then you don't learn truly what you've got. And there's so much good stuff hidden inside there that you might have just not seen at first glance. But yeah, thank you again for sharing. Leon has asked, which DAW do you prefer to use? And related to that, what are your most used / favourite VST plugins? We've kind of covered that previously. But generally, what doors you guys, also you ladies, should I say, working? Gina, do you want to take it?
Okay.
Sorry.
No, we're all too polite, just like. So I use Cubase. I have used like various others. I've used Logic for an old job I had, and they gave me a Mac for a bit. And then I've tried to get along with Reaper, but I mean, I use it for if I'm doing audio editing, I'll do it in Reaper. But generally, I just use Cubase. I know it so well that it's just the fastest one for me. I don't think any is really better than the other, though. Sorry, all the Reaper people who love it.
You upset an entire fan base. All
Do we have like Reaper stands in the chat or something?
I'm sure we do.
You're gonna see a wave of hate now. All supporting Reaper. What about yourself, Julie? Do you have a particular preference on DAW?
I am a Reaper person. I am the
Nice.
Reaper stan, I guess. I don't see anyone popping up in chat over here. Yeah, I have been using Reaper for, oh my gosh, I don't know, 6 years, 7 years now. I used it for sound design first, and then I kind of by accident ended up using it for music, and then I just stayed with it because I find it nice that when I'm doing one or the other, I don't have to switch my tools and my shortcuts and all of that. I think that I work way faster because I'm just accumulating knowledge in one DAW versus, spread across a couple others. Yeah, I know it's weird, but there are other people doing music in Reaper. I have seen like at least one.
We actually had a fantastic talk from one of the air wigglers, John Kelleher, who has explained to people that Reaper is not this terrifying place to be for music and has broken it down into a few different ways you can use it for music. So it might be worth having a quick catch up.
That is the one. That's the one that I'm thinking of. I was in his Twitter thread, like, I'm going to remember you next time I have a problem.
Yeah, he broke it down so well, and he knows so much. He's a very, very talented person.
But actually, I do disagree with him. I don't think it's actually that great for MIDI. I do think like Cubase and like Ableton are still going to be like better options. But for people who are a bit more flexible and happy to, look into like the third-party scripts and plugins and like make Reaper work for you, then it can be very awesome and powerful and fast.
Lovely, yeah, thank you. Noah, for yourself, which DAW do you use?
So I use Cubase. I'm not like a huge tinkerer, so I really like having something that works pretty well out of the box. I used to use Logic, but that was just a little bit too, it obfuscates a lot of things. Logic is funny because like it's very shiny and easy, and then if you want to do anything advanced, you have to go into the environment, which is like the scariest thing I've ever seen. I just use Cubase, and it kind of lets me, it's pretty flexible, it lets me customize stuff pretty well, but I'm not here kind of like scripting things into my DAW. I have so much admiration for people who do that, but not really my thing. So I find Cubase is the best for my workflow.
Fantastic, thank you very much.
Logic's environment is so scary. Like, what is the point? I feel like even Reason makes more sense to me, like just by a gut, feeling than the environment.
Totally.
It's like the Matrix. Like,
yeah.
why did they decide to make anything that you want to do just like that much harder?
But there's no middle ground, right? It's like really, really shiny, the environment. It's such a weird
They've got a very weird dynamic of you can do specific things so easily, like you can do like slow down fade outs and stuff, but then you to do like simple things you've got to go through, like Noah said, 17 different menus just to get there. It is a nightmare.
I'm over it.
So I'll ask you a question. I'll ask you all a question now because we're coming toward the end of the interviews. And then if we've got time after this, then we can address a few more of the live chat questions. Sorry we couldn't get through all the live chats, guys. We've got plenty of questions, but thank you so much for kind of participating. But the final kind of question from myself will be, what advice would you give to any aspiring video game composers? Feel free, anyone, to jump in on this one, whoever would like to take it first.
My advice is to also work on a secondary, possibly complementary skill, because the industry is brutal, and especially right now it's extra brutal. And as we talked about a little bit earlier, there are a lot of composers that don't actually make their like whole income from composing. I would say most composers, especially in the indie world, don't. like they diversify their income. Like for me, I'm also a sound designer. Others are teachers, others hold part-time jobs or day jobs or whatever other work. So kind of just think about that as a reality, and also based off of where you live, like what is your like social support in terms of like resources. Like if you are living in California in the United States, like you don't have that much support and rent is really high. So you might want to think about your secondary skill being something that like makes a lot of money. Sorry, it's kind of a pessimistic answer, but I think it's very realistic.
I'd agree with the realistic side. It's a thing you have to consider. As much as you'd want to live in the world of it's all going to be perfect, life sometimes isn't. But thank you for that. I really appreciate it. Noah, what advice would you give?
Yeah, I touched on this before, but I think my main piece of advice is just to keep in mind that it takes time. Things do end up panning out, and you do end up getting gigs from different places when you kind of go out. And like I said, you just put yourself out there in a lot of different places. Eventually, things start working out for all those different things. But it can take years, and so it can be really frustrating when you're starting out to be like, oh, like, am I not good enough? Why are things not happening? But another thing is that there's very high turnover, and so people start to trust you a lot more when they see you over and over again in conventions or in online communities. So it's just a really, really big investment in just showing up and just showing people that you're here to stay. But again, that's really unsatisfying because when you're starting out, you just kind of want to get going as fast as possible. I really recommend doing game jams kind of while you're waiting, and to help kind of accelerate the process. It's not something you're going to make income from, but it can be really, really great for your career and really, really enhance your skill sets, and also be a fantastic way to network. And like Julie said, it's definitely fine to get a side gig while you're building all of that stuff. And it doesn't have to be in music. I'm very fortunate that I have a day job teaching game audio, and I really, really love it. And I love that it's related to music. But before that, I had all manner of service industry gigs, and it's totally okay, right? Don't feel like some people have said like, oh, am I a sellout or whatever? You're not. It's just kind of a requirement when you're getting started.
Brilliant, thank you. Sorry to kind of be super slow. We've got 30 seconds. Gina, would you like to close us out with your final thoughts? But
don't give up. Keep going. You'll get there eventually.
Thank you so much. Apologies for kind of running slightly over there. But thank you so much, everyone, for joining us on this live stream. We will be dipping out in 15 seconds. But thank you all for joining us. Gina, Julie, Noah, thank you so much for taking time out of your day. I really appreciate it. And
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'll be in the Hangouts if you want to chat about anything, but we'll put all the links in there. But thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.